So the very first thing that I would recommend to people is that they do use Google Chrome. And in this short video, you can use this one with learners just to make sure that they know what the Google Chrome icon looks like. Unfortunately, we don't recommend Internet Explorer or other browsers for WriteOn, so Google Chrome is the preferred one to use. Then learners can Google WriteOn or put it in via the microphone, and then should log in using the password that hopefully they already have. Log in here. At this point, I would say that if you do forget your password, then please do ring the Freephone number, which is 1-800-2020-65, or you can text Learn as well. It's very important that the password that you use for your life on WriteOn, and that just one account is used per learner. If a learner has several accounts and do work with several passwords, then that work can't be merged, unfortunately. So please make sure that if you do forget your password, then you can ring the NALA free phone number, and the staff will ask you a few questions to make sure that you're the correct person and give you the password. It isn't possible to reset passwords, I'm afraid, so that's the only way that we have to deal with it, is through the free phone number. So once you have logged into WriteOn, there's 4 levels of content that map to QQI learning outcomes from levels 1 to 4. Currently, we only offer accreditation at levels 2 and 3, but if it's something that you're interested in, we can look to see if we can do more with levels 1 and 4 as well. At level 2, you'll see in the next screen coming up shortly that we offer 12 pathways or 12 minor awards that you can do in areas like reading, writing, listening and speaking, computer skills, using technology, and so on. These are all, as I say, minor awards. However, with the right combination of credits, so if you get up to 30 credits, you can do a certificate in general learning, which is a major award. That must include in your 30 credits one module from a section we call words and another one section called numbers. Now, at level 2, this is what the screen looks like. So when you land on this home or cafe scene, you can see where you can click on level 2 or level 3. So if I go into level 2, you can see here the 12 pathways. And at the moment, all these icons are at the bottom of the pathway. There, I'm trying to pull one up and immediately it snaps back. So I can't move up the pathway until I do an initial assessment. In this screen, you can also see the grouping of words, numbers, learn to learn, and technology. So it's important to keep in mind that if you're going for a major award through this, to take one from the words and one from the numbers category, and then any other ones that you choose. So to give you an example of some of the assessments, you click on Start Assessment, in this case reading, and at level 2 the assessments are quite short, so it's 5 screens for this particular assessment. The statements are also quite short, and the questions are typically ones where you have to have a pull down box like this one, or they may be drag and drop. And it's a similar type of question that's used across all the awards. So this type of format of a pull down, drag and drop, tick box, and so on. You can see what your score is and then click on to the next question. So in this type of question, you need to fill in the missing words. And it is very important to read the questions carefully as you work through them. Note that here I'll type 2 rows, the word as instead of the number. And again, it will indicate how I got on. What I would say about this type of one, which is a sorting exercise, Typically in these there will be an even number of things to sort. So if I pause the video there for a moment, when there's two boxes like this to move things into, it will then always be 3 and 3. Or if there's 8 things to sort, then it'll be 4 and 4, 10 things to sort, then 5 and 5. So as a tip, I always suggest that if there's one that you aren't sure of, start with the ones that you are, and then you can always move things about, knowing that it has to be 3 and 3 in this case. You can also change your mind as you're working. So there I'm moving checkout from one box to the other. And it's not until I hit next that I'm actually submitting my question. In this example, it's a matching type where I'll have to match the text to the boxes on the left. Again, I'd always suggest start with the ones you know and then move on. If I find the graphic a little small, I can press the Control key and plus to zoom in, and then to zoom out, Control key and minus. So that's just a tip to keep in mind as well. When I've completed the assessment, it will indicate how I got on, and you can see in this case I've moved all the way to the very top of the pathway, which means I can start on a summative assessment. So this is what we call recognition of prior learning. The fact that I got everything right, I can move straight to the top of the pathway and then do another assessment, a very short one again, to then go and apply for awards. So my tips for doing the assessments is to read the questions fully. If it's a tick box type 1, do read the questions carefully. Sometimes you might have to pick one answer, or sometimes it's 2 answers. And if it's sorting and there's an even number, which there typically is, then it will divide 8 into 4 and 4, or 6, as we saw in the example, into 3 and 3. So keep those things in mind. The summative assessment then looks very similar to the initial assessment. The difference is that you don't see the number of questions that you have to do scrolling in the bottom. So again, it's a drag and drop type format. The time that's ticking away in the bottom, there is no timer on it, so that's just a timestamp for our system, so don't worry too much about that. Although I do say to people it is good to try and do the assessments in one go if you can, because people get into a flow when they're doing it. But you can spend as long as you need on it. What you'll note at the end of it is that in this case you're told that there may be portfolio work to do, or if you got things wrong, you have to go back over the screens again. Note here there's a button that comes up saying portfolio pending. So at level 2, for all the awards, you do initial assessment or summative assessment, and you can apply for award. However, for writing and listening and speaking, there is additional work to do, and that's indicated by this portfolio pending message. If there isn't portfolio work to do, and I'll come on to the portfolio work in a minute, then there is an award form to fill out. And it is very important that the details that are put in here are very exact. So that includes a PPSN number, a date of birth, telephone, centre name if it applies. And as you can see in the bottom of the screen, that as a learner you tick, I verify that I have done the work myself and submitted it. Okay, so just to go back there again to show you that. Make sure that you hit submit and then take the opportunity to review all this information before you submit it. That can delay the process from our side if there is a digit wrong here. For example, the letter O or a 0 can often be interused. So do make sure that this is filled out and that submit is clicked on. Once that's been filled out correctly and NAL has verified the work, then some months afterwards, a QQI certificate will be sent out in the post. So this is an example of what a certificate could look like. Some common errors that we do find on the forms is, as I say, incorrect information or incomplete forms, or the form may be filled out, but people forget to hit submit, and the submit only appears when you tick the box at the bottom of the page, or that people have used multiple accounts and passwords, so they've actually done work under one password and account, but then are trying to submit for an award somewhere else. So do make sure that the one account and password is used for all the award work. If somebody hasn't passed an initial assessment, then I'll show you what happens. So you can always use the icons on this lesson page to indicate where you are, to either apply for an award or submit an award. And there is the form as I've shown you with the verify and submit. Or I can start another assessment and to work my way through as before. Sometimes I may need to listen to an audio by clicking on the audio button there to type in my answer. And in this case, I haven't completed it, so I got it wrong. The next screen will show then that I won't end up at the top of the pathway, but rather part of the way up. So I need to then work on exercises that are based on that exercise that I failed. And the exercises are similar to the assessments in that they are drag and drop type questions. Maybe I have to change the word order, matching and so on, but I need to work all the way through them to move on to get towards the top of the block. Some of the questions will be crossword type ones, so in this case I haven't filled it out. What I would say is if you are filling out a crossword type question, to type in all the letters completely. So in this case, the answer is brother. And in this case, the answer is sister, but I will type the T again so that it's entered. Some people find it difficult to fill out the crossword, so type in the whole word, even if there is a letter already in there. So UNCLE again. And if I wasn't happy with it and I failed it, I could always hit try again, and that would reset the screen. So the exercises will tell me how I got on. However, if I didn't do something right, you will note in this case the striped block, and it's told me that I've only got 4 out of 13 exercises correct. So I won't be able to move all the way to the top to the summative assessment until I've completed everything. So I'll have to work my way through the exercises again. Again, remember the rule, in this case it will be 3 and 3. And when I've completed that block, then I can start on the summative assessment. The only anomaly to it is writing. And for writing, you get to the very top, but then there's one last block to do. So for example, here's some questions from the writing type of assessment. I should say that all the questions are randomized. So what I'm showing you today may not appear when you go to try it, but it'll be a set of these that you may see. Note here that it's looking for 2 correct answers, so this is where it's important to read the questions very carefully. So note where the writing one that I have 1 block still to do before I get to the summative assessment. So if that happens to you and you've got everything right, there's always that extra block to do under handwriting. But for all the rest, if you get everything right, you move straight to the summative assessment. And as I mentioned, there is the portfolio work that needs to be done for the writing and listening and speaking. So here I'm working through the summative assessment for writing, and you can see that there's matching type of exercises to do. So that's just one of them, but there'd be a couple more to do. And you'll see now that it says that there's portfolio work to be completed. So when I click next, or if I go to options to go back to the lesson, then I would have to go and do my portfolio work. So if I just fast forward over this, where you can see the symbol that says portfolio pending. So I can go to options and portfolio at the side to find out what is that portfolio work that has to be done. And there's a short introduction to what the portfolio is, and you can see there's 2 tabs, writing and listening and speaking. So under listening and speaking, you need to ring the Freephone number and give some information. And under writing, you need to write 5 sentences. And they can be about a recent holiday or a topic of interest or reasons for going back to education. So that has to be handwritten and posted in to NALA, and you can use FreePost NALA to do that. So some tips for that portfolio work. If you are doing handwriting at level 2, make sure that you use proper sentences with full stops and capital letters, and that any work that's going to be sent in to FreePost to NALA, that you have checked over it before you've sent it in, and make sure that there's no spelling or grammar mistakes. In fact, we often suggest to send in 6 sentences so that we have an extra one to look at. Do make sure that the words are your own, that they're not a friend's, a tutor's, or from Google. We have seen several examples where several learners have submitted at the same time, and it's the exact same sentences, and then we can't accept that work. And make sure that your name and the password is on your work. We don't need your PPSN on anything that you send in by post. It is important to ring NALA when you have completed that portfolio work, and that when that has been validated by NALA, that you go back in and submit for the award. And I'll explain that again in the next few slides. So if I want to move to level 3 from level 2, I go to options at the side, And you can see at level 3, the pathways are a lot longer, and so much so that I need to use the slider across the bottom to see everything. Like level 2, the only way I can move up the path is by doing assessments. What you will also notice on the screen is that there's C's beside it, which indicates that these are compulsory modules for employability skills. So there's 3 certificates you can do major awards in, depending which one, whether it's employability skills, general learning, or ICT. There will be different compulsory ones. But for a general award, for a major award at level 3, maths and communications will always be compulsory. So as I say, that's the 3 major awards you can get to get a total of 60 credits. And like level 2, there is portfolio work that needs to be done, but quite extensively more. So for most of the modules, there is additional portfolio work that needs to be done. In this particular example, you can see that there's some work complete, and then in this one, there is portfolio pending. So I can go to Options, Portfolio at the side to see what kind of portfolio work needs to be done. And then you see the tabs for the different modules that require portfolio work. So in this case, I'm looking at computer literacy, and I can see that there is the first activity is going to be to upload a document. And it is important that when this work is done, to contact NALA. And only if you're applying for an award. So as it says, you must upload this document and it must contain this particular sentence. So to do that, if you have the file, we'll say already created, you go to the Files area. So we'll imagine that this file has already been created and is going to be uploaded. In here you can see there's other files that I've already uploaded from 2017. Every learner will have 2011 files in their account. These are just examples that we have put into the system. So if you see that, don't panic. It isn't somebody else's work. They're just those examples. And make a note of the space as well. I'll talk about how to save space shortly. So you click on Upload a File, and when you click on that, then you can browse through your desktop or documents to wherever that Word document is. Make sure it's named correctly as indicated in the portfolio assignment, and then click on Open, and that will upload the file. You can also put in a short description if you wish. And then save the changes. And now we can see that my file is there. The other activity that has to be done for computer literacy is to fill in these blanks here. And it is very important that every blank box has been filled in. If there is a question not answered, then that work is incomplete. Even if there's, in this case, 11 questions and 10 have been done, if there's one not done, then it's incomplete, and then that delays the accreditation process for us as well to go back and get that answer. So do make sure that every piece of work is done and that full and proper sentences are used with the correct punctuation, capitalization and spelling. So some tips for portfolio work at level 3: to use proper sentences, for maths, to draw the figures as indicated and to label them correctly. So here's one, for example, in the corner of this slide, a house that has to be drawn, where you have to label the angles of elevation and also make sure that you put in 2 square windows as well of the same size. Don't leave any blanks in any of the online forms. And this drawing for maths that has to be submitted, that's put in by post. So I would recommend to draw it out on graph paper, send it by post, and make sure that your name and your password is on it, not your PPSN. And when you've completed any portfolio work, ring NALA to say that the work has been done so that we can validate that for you. And once validated and everything is fine, go back in and submit for the award. I mentioned about the space. So here we can see 98% space. Sometimes if people are uploading images or videos, they get quite big. So here we can see the size of these files. These are quite small. They're 11 kilobytes, 13, 58. If you have images, so for example, if it's an image that has to be in a Word document, then what I would suggest is when the image is in the document, click on the Format tab, then click on Adjust Groups and Compress Picture. And that will compress any images that are within a Word document. Or if it's just an image file itself, like a JPEG, then use something like Microsoft Paint to copy it in and then select the resize option and change it from, say, 100 to something smaller like 20, and then save as a PNG file. And that would give space to upload other files. At the end of this webinar, the recording will be available on YouTube, so you can go back and play this and show it to other learners so that you're aware of how to reduce the size of images. As I say, once you have contacted NALA to have your work checked, so the portfolio work, then it's important to go back in and apply for the award once it's been checked. So this is where you would fill out the form, double check all the details, and make sure that everything is correct. So the PPSN, date of birth, click on verify, and very importantly, hit submit. A lot of people just hit the verify button and don't hit submit. And then unfortunately, then the work hasn't been sent on. So that can delay the process because we have to chase people then to see if they want the award or not. And to keep in mind the following dates for submission. So the dates that are in bold there, the 8th of April and the 29th of April, this is the next round for this year. So we do like to have all the work in by the 8th of April. Bear in mind that Easter is early this year, so to try and even have work in perhaps before Easter. And then we will submit everything by the 29th of April. So we do recommend to have work in before the 8th of April in case if there is anything wrong, we have time to send it back and then that a learner can correct it, send it back into us again, we can double check it, so then that we're in for the 29th of April. So that's the two deadlines, but do keep the first deadline in mind. And then the second round for this year is the October-November one. So again, to have work in for the 14th of October, and if there are any difficulties, we can send it back, get the work checked, and then put everything in for the 4th of November. Note that certificates that come out for the November-October ones won't come out till March, and for anything that goes in April for this year won't come out till September. That may seem like a long time, but that does take in the internal verification process, external verification that we do, submission to QQI's QBS database, certificate issue and dispatch again. Two final things that I'm going to show you which you might be interested to know. If you are working on exercises in WriteOn, so the exercises are different to the assessments where there will be a picture. And this one I've indicated that I failed a summative assessment and I have to go back over exercises on that pathway. I can click on the picture and then change the topic, say from family to one of interest, for example, work. Then when I click back into the exercise again, the wording and the images that will be used will more reflect a work scenario, even though it's all still based on the same learning outcomes for QQI. If I want to change it again, I go back to lessons, click on the icon, click on the picture, and I can change it to something else. So for example, say sport and leisure. And that will then create a new set of questions. And I often recommend that if people are getting stuck on exercises, sometimes they can do this as a way to motivate themselves if there's an area of interest. And you can see here that the images and wording is around sports, so team, coach, and so on. Or if you spot something that is wrong with an exercise, we'll fix that for you, no problem. And while we're fixing it, you can move on by changing the topic. So as I say, that's something to bear in mind. And the last thing that I'll show you is new content that we've put up called Preparing for Level 3. So you can go to options at the side, Preparing for Level 3, and this will bring you to this new area. And this is unaccredited. So the idea is to help people going from Level 2 to Level 3. You can move up and down the pathway because there's no assessments, and you can decide where you want to start. All these topics that are in here are topics that have been identified by learners and tutors as areas that are difficult when going from Level 2 to Level 3. And we've put in some extra ones here on online resources, discovering information using social media. And all the exercises in here are similar with drag and drop and boxes to fill out, but we also have a lot of videos that you can peruse through at your own leisure. So I go to options to look back at the lessons again. And for example, for algebra, I can see that there's some exercises to do. And this provides a good way of practicing for Level 3 without having to go for an award if you'd find this useful. I can go back and I can go forward because it's not an assessment. And then I can play a video, for example, this one on solving equations. There is an audio for these, I should say, but I don't have it recorded in this particular video. But the audio will call out everything that you see on the slides. And then finally, I can move back to the levels or the lessons by going to options at the side. And just to be aware that under levels 2 and 3, under options, there are other features like you can look at resources, reading text, games, there's latest news, you can get award results and get a status of how you're doing so far. So do check out those different things under the options at the side. There is a skills checker as well. I'm just running over time, so I won't show you that one, but just basically to say that this allows people to get a diagnostic really of how they're getting on, and this is at the start. So you can go in, do these statements and get an overall PDF of how you might be in certain areas like maths and communications. Okay, so you can download a PDF and it'll recommend areas to go to. And I often think it's a good thing to do this at the start of a year and then maybe to go back over it at the end of the year and see how people have got on in the meantime. Okay, and finally, if you have time today, I'd really appreciate if you could fill out the evaluation on SurveyMonkey. So the URL is there. if you wouldn't mind doing that. And if you want to contact us at any stage, do ring the Freephone number, the 1800 20 20 65, or you can contact distance@nala.ie. If there are any questions, I'll take them now and I'll stop the recording, and feel free to type them into the chat, and I'm going to open up the microphones as well.